Hello, everybody. A couple people have asked me about pullings just lately, and I thought I would kill a couple birds with one stone and do something a little more general, just a video about asexual reproduction and the two main ways you can do it. And a third bird can be killed with one stone too, because this plant is a mess and really needs to be cleaned up. So this is just all old leaves that you need to get rid of. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that real quick, pull those off. That's a good start. Won't take very long. One thing that you should really be careful about doing, or be careful not to do, is when you see an old spent, well, here it didn't happen, but when you see an old spent flower, generally don't go pulling that off, don't yank it, because they can be attached really sturdily to the plant, even after they've dried up, and you can end up pulling the whole plant out of the medium. But here, it wouldn't really matter. I was kind of hoping that it would hold on so I could demonstrate that, actually. But anyway, if you just want to take pullings, you want to take some healthy leaves. Don't get the ones that are almost gone. I mean, you might be able to root that. Maybe I'll throw it over to the side just in case, because it does have some healthy stuff at the bottom. That doesn't. That's completely gone. This one is okay, but once you take a leaf off, it's a bit of a race against time from when you pull it till it starts dying off from the end and gets down to the stem end. So I prefer to take a leaf, take one of the back leaves. Obviously, you don't want to go messing up the center of your plants, but take it off carefully. Take something that's fairly sturdy and alive, because you want to get as many plants as you can off of that generally. So just hold it and you can rock it back and forth carefully. And this is really holding on, and there it comes off. So I'm going to take some more, but I'm going to do something else first. And of course they stick to your fingers. So this plant is really divided. There's at least 3 in there, maybe 4 growing points. A lot of pings will divide pretty much every time they flower. Not all of them, but so let's just pull that out of there. You can see there's not a whole lot of root here. And I also want to change the medium. This is really old medium. Actually, it's not too bad. I have a couple mixes that had a really high percentage of coarse quartz sand, and those seem to be more likely to get browning heart disease, which is a really disappointing thing to have happen to your plants. So don't be too worried. Just get the extra soil off. You can see some roots kind of trying to get out there. Also, we've got a lot of moss here. Not a whole lot, but when you get a lot of moss, excuse me, when you get a lot of moss, that can also kind of impede your plants. It can keep the roots from getting through to the soil, or to your medium rather. So, all right, now let's get a few more of these old dead things off of here, just to make our job easier. There's one, there's up, we can just kind of yank that out of there. This is all stuck together pretty well, but I think we can still do this. So if we look now, we can see at least a couple different growing points. There's this one and this one. So I'm just gonna kind of get my finger in, look at the way, with this plant it's not quite so bad. If you've got a plant with really big flat leaves, sometimes it can be harder to see exactly what leaf goes to which side, because they're going to be all intertwined. Here, because they're really straight, it's fairly easy. And you have a really distinct base here. So I'm going to just go ahead and gently pull those apart. There's a new plant. And you notice there's not much in the way of root here. There's a little bit. It's winter now, and this plant actually gets about 3 times this size when it's in active summer growth. Sometimes you'll have a situation where it looks like you have 2 distinct growing points, but they haven't really grown apart yet. And if you try to pull those apart, you can end up just shattering everything, which isn't necessarily a horrible thing unless you really were attached to getting 2 plants, because all of those pieces will root. So there's another one. And well, it looks like two more here. So that's also pretty distinct. They've had a chance to differentiate. What happens is they grow from a single stem and then they divide, and sometimes that stem just hasn't gotten long enough for the two crowns to really be different. So I think we're good. I'm not, actually it looks like maybe something else is starting to happen here. It could be just that the plant was a little crowded and it's elongated. I think that's what's going on. So there's really nothing else to divide here. So now that I have this open, this is a really good opportunity to take some pullings because it's really easy to get them off. So I'm going to get the largest one because I can take the most off of that one. So let's just take some of those back leaves. Of course, they stick to your fingers, but that's all right. You can just take a bunch, actually. You don't have to do even one by one. Ugh. There's Snotty. What you gonna do? That's the way it is. So maybe I got enough off of that one. Sometimes you'll get one, this one went flying, but sometimes you'll get one that already has a bit of a root because the roots actually come from the base of the leaves. So here's another big one. Let me grab just a couple off of that. I don't need an extraordinary number of new plants of this, but it is a beautiful hybrid. It's a Moctezuma hybrid. I don't know exactly what it is because I grew it from unidentified seed that someone sent me. But anyway, it has enormous flat pink flowers that really show the Moctezuma influence, but I'm not sure what else is in there. Here's a photo of it in bloom last summer. It's definitely not pure Moctezuma. It would be a lot longer. So we've done that. So let's just pot these up real quick. So I actually got 3 pots ready. So this is my standard mix as it is now. It's pumice and perlite and some cactus mix. And I think there's a little bit of turfus in there. This is the turfus. You can get it in the States fairly cheaply as aquatic plant media. And it's just a crushed baked clay. Sort of like an old style cat litter, to be honest. So anyway, if there's anything really messy down there, I'll get it off, but these are pretty good. So I'm just gonna make a little hole, and I wet the tops of these first. That makes it a lot easier. Otherwise, this mix is fairly light and kind of a pain to deal with. I do have a couple different growing points there, but I'm not gonna worry about it. Let's put it down a tiny bit deeper because I want one of these to be my main specimen plant. So let's get that one in there. Let's take a few more of those off just for the heck of it because it really is a beautiful plant. And I like to share my favorite ones especially so that if I lose mine, I know who to hit up for a new start. And I have done that a couple times. And I've also lost a couple plants that I didn't give starts to, and they're gone. So that's especially sad. Let's get that off of there. That's a mess. And here's an old flower stalk. We'll get that off. All right, so those are now potted up. And just as an addendum here, here's another plant of that exact same cross. And you can see it's a little farther along in the winterization process, so we've got some real succulent leaves coming. A few of the old ones left, and I could divide that up into 4 plants too, so maybe I will. So now we've got this pile of pullings here, and what are we going to do with them? There's different ways you can do it. You can just lay them on top of soil, and I sometimes do that, especially if it's winter leaves. These are kind of in between. They're not really succulent, so with something like this, what I like to do is get just one of these little food containers, get one that is completely sealed, that doesn't have holes in the bottom, and I line it with a little paper towel and just barely dampen it. You can see the edges of it are still just slightly dry, so not enough to soak the whole thing. And then all we really have to do is just lay them in. And you know, it doesn't matter if the ends touch the paper or not. Sometimes you'll get pullings that are really curled and they'll be a little awkward. The point is to have a humid atmosphere in there, just humid, but not, once again, not soaking wet, not drippy, because if it's really too wet, then you're going to end up with rot. One of those actually split. I should probably get that piece out of there because nothing will come of that. I notice a lot of these already have little roots on them. But generally, when they start sprouting, it's the bud that comes first. The root that's on the leaf isn't really going to develop into anything because the roots on the individual plants come from the base of the leaves. So when they bud, that's when you're going to get the roots that are going to be meaningful. And with some species, you'll have this happening on the plant itself. It won't even wait to be pulled off. So you'll end up with little plants forming at the base and then basically etiolating their way out into the light. Etiolation is the process of, it's the way that plants stretch to get light. So if you've ever grown a barrel cactus and not given it enough light and it starts looking like something with a nipple, that's etiolation. But in this case, it helps the plant, and once it gets to the edge, then it'll start growing normally and root in. Gigantea is notorious for that. So here we are. We've got all of these in there. So now I will just seal that and put it under the lights and remember to mark it. This one is fairly obvious, so I wouldn't forget what it is, but so best carnivorous plants, Moctezuma hybrid, because that's all I know about it. But if you take a bunch of pullings from some round-leafed things that all look the same, you won't remember later. So here's another container full of pullings that I did probably 10 days to 2 weeks ago. And as you can see, the paper is almost dry. It does feel just barely damp. And you can see that there's condensation on the inside, and that's really enough. If that paper's too damp, you can get rot going. Let's just take a look at them. You can see they're just sitting here. It doesn't really matter if it's touching the medium or not, as long as the atmosphere is moist in there. So if you look there, I don't know if it's a little hard. Let me zoom in here just a minute. So you can see on this one, for example, just the beginning of a little bud there. There's several. That one is upside down, but you can still see the bud up there, just starting to come off. There was one I thought that seemed to have maybe a bit of root on it, starting. Yeah, that actually is something that was on it when I pulled it off, so maybe not. But they're going, and probably in another few weeks, they will be ready to pot into something else. The other way you can do this is just put them directly on some medium, whatever your favorite medium is, and they will also go. With winter leaves, like I said, you can just put them on the top. It's really easy. With the summer leaves, because they're thinner, they lose water faster, so it's just a little easier if you seal them up like this. And here are some older pullings, and you can see this is Pinguicula gigantea, and you can see that the leaf is slowly starting to rot away now, but we've got a pretty good little plantlet coming on here. Actually, with gigantea, with some of them, like gigantea and agnata, you'll often get several. This has at least 3 on it, so that's good. Here's one where the leaf is almost completely rotted away, and I need to get that little plant planted. And let's see what's going on with this one. I'm not sure where that came from. I may have actually just knocked it off of there. And here's another gigantea. This is the red blush form. And let's see if I can get, you can see just barely on the end, there's just a little green blip there. That's the beginning of a bud. And I have heard of cutting the leaves down the middle, and sometimes that will give you more. I haven't had a whole lot of luck with that, but it's possible. These are a couple little pullings of something else that I took at the same time as the other ones, and they've been really slow. Sometimes they are. There's something going on there, but I'm just going to wait. So far, it's held on pretty well and hasn't started rotting. So that's what you do. Also, I was going to point out here, this paper is actually a little bit too wet. And the result of that is you can get mold going or algae. So this little ugly green blob is this kind of gelatinous algae. It feels like Jell-O. And I'm just going to pull it right out of there. Well, I thought I was going to. But it can get going and really kind of make a mess of things if you're not careful. So there it is. So just moist is better. And that's it. I hope you all try it and have success in making more pink.